Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Melanie Bajrovic. She continues to build upon the investment knowledge that her family began to nurture at the age of 12. She has now established herself as a very successful entrepreneur and real estate mogul. Today, she shares her latest book, From Minimum Wage to Millionaire, The Wealthy Barmaid. Find out more about Melanie and her book at melaniebajrovic.com. Hi, Melanie. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you this morning?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. We're so blessed to have you. I was so happy that Bianca introduced us because you have a lot to share with our audience today. I told you before the interview that one of the questions we get asked most on the show is, can you please have topics of talking about how to build my business, how I can make money and be profitable? And you know a little bit about that. You started out as a barmaid and worked yourself up to a real estate mogul who is now a successful mogul and a millionaire. So that didn't happen by accident. There's no quick tricks to that. And you're going to share a little bit about that with our audience. But before we go to that, share with our audience a little bit about your backstory. What brought you to where you ultimately are today?
Okay. So I started working really young. I was really ambitious as a kid. I was always watching my family. I come from an immigrant family. They came from the former Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And my grandfather had just really grandiose dreams back then. It was communist Yugoslavia at the time. They came here in 1970, and he wanted to provide a better life for his future generations. And he knew that he couldn't excel as greatly in the former Yugoslavia as he could in, the capitalism of the West here in North America. So they came to Canada, and my grandfather knew right away two things. He said, number one, you got to have real estate. Number two, you got to have your own businesses. So that's what he set out to do. I mean, they worked for years doing all kinds of things. Like my grandfather picked worms at night, worked in factories during the day. My grandma was cleaning rooms and doing anything they could get their hands on until they finally saved up a bit of money. And they ended up buying their first investment property. Years later, they ended up buying their first tiny little bar and so on and so forth. But I was lucky growing up that I saw all that. I didn't even necessarily know working as an employee for somebody else. It wasn't as predominant in my life than watching my family run their own businesses, and mainly in the bar restaurant industry and real estate. So coincidentally, I'm in those two fields as well.
Yeah.
So I was really young. I started working at the age of 12. My parents had a restaurant a year after I was born. They opened it. And when I was, just about old enough, it might be child labor, not sure, but in their eyes, it was perfectly fine to work for the family business.
Yeah.
I started in the back in the kitchen, and then I went on to bussing, hostessing, serving, bartending. And I did that for about 15 years. All the while saving as much money as I could. And my family was really great with that. My mother was really frugal. My grandparents were frugal too. She'd keep like 100% of my paychecks for me. And, I'd live off my tip money as much as I could. And when I could, I'd even save some of that. So by the time I was 22 years old, I had enough money in my bank account. And I thought, okay, it's time to do something with this money. It's just going to sit there. You don't make any money on interest in savings or checkings accounts, of course. So that's when I decided I was going to buy my first real estate investment property. It was the best decision that I've ever made up to that point. It really enabled me to start building that foundation for building wealth and creating these extra passive cash flow streams of income in my life. I had no idea back then how fruitful that decision was going to be for me. I just thought, okay, I know that this is just a good idea. I know you should invest your money, real estate, after researching all kinds of things. I mean, I researched the stock market and all other things I could have done with my money, but I found real estate was the best decision for many reasons. It has the most control. I could control how much I buy it for. What do I renovate it for? Who do I rent it out to? When to sell, for how much to sell, all these things. You don't have that kind of control with many investments, right?
Yes.
So, and you can't control any market, including real estate. But historically speaking, real estate values are constantly going up, assuming all factors such as good location, good structure, and things like this. So, and not to mention, 9 out of 10 millionaires out there were all created through real estate. So it was like a no-brainer. It was like, okay, I know real estate's good. I just don't know how it's going to impact my life, how great it's going to be. I just knew it was a good idea.
Yeah. Wow.
Moving forward, I realized over time, like, whoa, this real estate stuff really like works. After like a few years, I was able to do a refinance. I pulled out, $53,000 on my first deal, and that I was able to buy more real estate. People can do whatever they want with it, but my goal was really to secure myself financially. That was always my why, my number one reason. And so, needless to say, it was a phenomenal decision that I made since I was really young. And I kept buying investment properties whenever I saved up enough money. I continuously worked all through my schooling, my undergrad, my MBA. While I had jobs, I moved to the big city in Toronto and kept bartending there. And anytime I had a little bit more money, I just kept building a portfolio. So that was the beginning of my real estate career. And I also own a bar restaurant. That decision came about when I was about 26 years old. I had been working, as I said, for about 15 years in bartending, managing properties in restaurants and bars. And I realized, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I came from a very entrepreneurial family, and I decided it was time for me to start my own business. So it took me about 90 days. I found something I really liked, and owning the property itself was really high on my priority list for that bar and restaurant as well.
Cool.
So within 4 months, I had closed the deal. It was the scariest thing. I mean, we could talk about that later. But it was a big deal for me. And then, I ended up buying, it was a 20,000 square foot commercial property that I run my bar restaurant out of today. And it's been 5 years now running.
Wow. And there's so many takeaways from your sharing here. And what I really like, my great-grandparent, who's great-grandparent for me, but they carried on that work ethic of also wanting to make something better in their lives. They came from Eastern Europe and also Germany. And they decided they just wanted to make a better life for themselves. My great-grandma here worked a restaurant where she not only took care of the entire restaurant, she cooked behind the counter, served all the people. So she was the busboy, the waitress, the cashier, and the cook all at once. But what I find so and admirable, which I'm sure you do with your grandparents, is the fact that, there's no such thing as failure as an option. We have to do what we have to do to make it happen. Your grandparents came here with $69, I believe I read. What?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, no, there's no option. This is not going to fail. We have to succeed. And what I got from, seeing my grandma then and then my mom also pushing hard to make a better life is that, I think now I often hear people say, I heard this on a train going to work one day in Manhattan. I heard these two people just graduate from college saying, oh, I work in Wall Street, and they're asking me to make copies. I don't make enough money to make copies. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, where have we come from? From immigrant status, when we come here, well, there's nothing we won't do to make stuff happen, to I don't get paid enough to make copies.
Absolutely. It's a really, unfortunately, I think our society has somehow shifted towards this entitlement attitude. And I don't know what makes a lot of immigrants super successful, if it really is just because they came from nothing and they had no choice but to hustle versus born and raised in North America. We don't have to, we don't really fear where our next meal is coming from. Kind of. So are we developed in that way? I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is, my grandparents, as you said, in 1970 came with $69 in their pockets with 2 children. But it was a choice. They didn't have to go. They were comfortable back home. It was communism. Everybody lived fine. It was all fine. But it all just started, I guess, with that dream and that hunger. It was like, no, I'm going to make this happen no matter what. So it's that fuel, that hunger inside of them that just, there's no way, shape, or form that I'm going to fail on this, dream that they had. And they were so set to make a better life for their kids, for their grandkids, and now for their great grandchildren. And I look at those decisions they made today. Picture what it takes, the guts to leave, relative security back home, coming with nothing, with children. You don't know a lick of English. You don't know anything about how the system works somewhere else, and trying to make a go at it. And so when I'm faced with decisions today, I always look back at that and I go, what an inspiration. So you're scared of, this little deal or something. Oh, you might, lose this, a tiny percentage of your money or something, or it might not work out. It helps me to push past those fears, because you don't really have anything to worry about, comparatively speaking. Yeah. Do and risk in their lives for a better life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what really came out for me hearing that about your grandparents is that you said that actually they had everything they really needed in their communist country. I mean, it wasn't that they were starving, they had a roof over their head, but they had a dream for more. And I really believe deep down in my heart that God put us on this planet to live our greatest full potential. And we have talents and gifts, each of us within us, that want to be realized. And I think they're there, those gifts, those desires, for a reason to be put into the world, not only to make it better, but for us to fully realize and bring that into fruition. And sometimes in a communist country, that just isn't possible because you're kept under wraps. It might not be bad. You might have food on the table. You might just have shelter and such, but you're just kind of just existing.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think today I'm hearing from a lot of people in this country, we talked about entitlement a little bit, that, hey, communism, socialism, rocks. It's all like oneness. Everyone gets the same stuff. The rich people should give their stuff to the poor people. It should be more equal. And I'm like, well, who gets to decide what's equal and what's not? And from what I've seen in communist countries, there's people at the top running the country who are still living larger than the people down below. So there's never this full, complete equality like we would see in heaven or something, or nirvana. But I think the reason why that immigrants come around the world to this country and Canada is because that is that potential to fully bring your dreams and your talents and gifts to fruition completely. And that's something that stops when you have a government that says, well, you only get this much and we're going to take the rest and give it to other people.
Correct. That's the magic of North America. There is no limit. The limit is whatever you want it to be, whatever you can see, right? And whatever our minds can conceive, that is what can be possible. It would absolutely be terrible, I think, for us to live in such a an communist type of society where somebody else is choosing. No, this is it. This is your cap, but we're all different. And it's okay that somebody just wants, to live in, whatever, 1,000 square foot little place. They have, a car or not, or whatever. And they're perfectly okay with that. That's absolutely fine. Some of us want to reach the stars, and that should be okay too.
Yeah, so absolutely.
The same, right?
Absolutely. Now, for you saw that structure and that kind of admiration to work towards, seeing your grandparents, your parents work hard. For folks who maybe didn't grow up with a financial background, to see that kind of worked out for them, their parents showing them, hey, there's another way. You don't just have to take a job. What would be your stance to someone, hey, I'm working at a job. How do I possibly go from job where I've never learned to save, I really don't understand finances, to becoming an entrepreneur and maybe even in real estate? How do they even begin?
That's a great question. I would love to start by saying my family didn't want me to be an entrepreneur, okay? Especially coming from Eastern Europe. I'm a female. They want everything to be safe for me. They would have loved if I just got some government job with a pension and I'm going to be okay. And they wanted me to marry somebody with a government job. And it's like double duty. Because listen, not just real estate, but business is a gladiator sport. Okay. I do look at it that way. It is not for everyone. It is not for the faint of heart. The ups and downs, your spikes and your lows, the risks that are involved. It is scary. And entrepreneurism, it's a lonely road, and you have to work a lot. It's like, if you don't want a 9 to 5, be ready to hustle 24/7. And your output is directly related, as I've seen, it's directly proportionate to your input. So however much you want to put in, your productivity, effort, and energy, that's how much you're going to make out of it. Therefore, for any parent, I suppose that's scary, right? It's like, no, I'd rather you just have a easy life. Let your steady pay come in, have a pension. You don't have to worry about anything. So they weren't pushing me by any means. They actually, before I bought my commercial property and started my own restaurant, they all begged me not to do it. They lost sleep over it. My poor grandmother, my grandfather, my parents. I mean, everybody thought I would fail. Nobody's ever done this in my entire family or anybody that we know by themselves. I did this completely by myself. Everyone else had a partner, husband, wife, team, or children working, to help the whole thing. So believe me, it was not like, oh yes, we come from this entrepreneurial family, you should do it too. They were really cautioning me not to do it. So I actually learned a lot. I was self-taught a lot of it. So my best advice for other people, aside, I was just lucky that I got to see the ins and outs of the industry I chose before, let's say, I bought my bar restaurant. I got to run one for 15 years and I knew ins and outs. I knew the expenses versus how much you can make. I knew profit margins. I knew what it would take. And it is not a glamorous business, let me tell you. From late nights and, a lot of drunks and a lot of fights and vandalism and police. And, I mean, the list goes, theft, not to mention, it goes on. But for people who don't get to witness that and see that, I notice a lot of them, they think it's so glamorous and, oh, my dream is to own a bar, one or a restaurant, and I get to just drink for free all the time and invite my friends and, have this else. It's definitely not. So most people, I want to make sure that they don't idealize business in general, whether it's a bar, whether it's, something online, whether it's real estate. But the best thing you can do, and what I had to do myself too, is you educate yourself. That's number one gift you can get in, invest in yourself. I know it's so cliche. We hear it all the time now that it's almost losing its
value. Yeah.
Value, exactly. But if you don't know the ways there are to make money, how are you going to make money? So that, education starts with that. So if you're coming from something, you didn't have a family, you didn't have an upbringing where you got to see it firsthand, how else are you going to know than to go out there and study it? Try to, especially for young people, I love to say our young years, instead of, working just for a paycheck, it should be to gain as much experience as possible. I mean, if I knew what I know now, gosh, I would have, wouldn't have necessarily been in the restaurant industry for 15 years. I would have went out there, worked in finance, I would have worked in a law office for a bit. I would have loved to learn all these things that are so valuable to me now that are needed. But my truth is just, learning all these ways how to start a business, try to see where you can invest your money. Most people won't be successful because of what they don't know. But then let's say you've learned all that, you've researched. It's not enough just to have that knowledge. knowledge without execution isn't power. So you got to now take that action and learn the key principles you need to get started and apply them. Learn about, in business, taking calculated risks is also very important. I just want to point that out to your audience. Ensuring you have enough knowledge in the industry that you're going into is so important, because if you miscalculate it, this is how you can this is how a lot of people lose their shirts. Yeah. So you got to understand, knowing which deal is good and why, and knowing how to evaluate businesses and being aware of your potential downsides and the risks involved before jumping in, just to give you that safety net. And always, when I'm judging my numbers, before I bought my bar restaurant, I calculated every which way that I could make more sales and how I could increase profit margin, how I could bring people to walk through that door, a gazillion reasons. But I always was very conservative with my numbers, extremely conservative, just again, to give you another safety net. Because you don't want to lose everything. You built so hard, you worked so hard, you put all this time, energy, effort, money, and you want to make sure that you have a fighting chance.
Yeah. I believe it was Kevin O'Leary of what's the name of that show again? You know it. Shark Tank. Yeah. He would say, if you invest, you don't take more than 10% of what you have to invest towards, like your money, your pool. You don't take more than 10% of what you got to start with investing. And my dad used to be like, he came from Germany, and his idea was, well, if we find the perfect scheme, get rich scheme, bam, we're going to be hit. And so he would save all his money and then invest it in something that crapped out. And I think the biggest thing I learned from watching him was, it was just kind of like, this idea of overnight success. And it's not true. Anything you're going to build, like Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither building anything great and successful is going to be an overnight success. I now have had people on the show who've built $300 million companies and such. And he said it took 25 years till I started to see major results, like over 10 million. But people think, day one. And that's the mistake I made when I first started my first business, is I saw very successful people, and you think, okay, look how they're living today. They have a jet, they have all this free time, and that's what we really want. When people say, I want to win the lotto, they don't want the mansion, all that stuff. What they really want is their time, and to be able to say, this is what I want to do today, and I'm going to go do it. And there's no money that's going to stop me. Money's not an obstacle. That's really, I think, what we all want. So I looked at that, and I started my first day like, what I really want is to start my day at 10 a.m. and meditate for an hour. and then work for 4 hours a day. Well, I did that my first month of business. I made no sales. And then I realized how much I didn't know. So like you were just mentioning, I had to go out there and learn how to sell. I hired someone to help me learn what I didn't know about business, about marketing and sales and, money in and money out. And if I have to hire someone, what do I have to look out for? All the things that I didn't think about I needed. I'm good at this talent. We'll think I'll start a business with knitting socks. I'm good at knitting socks. That's great. But there's more to the business than just knitting the socks.
Yeah. It's not just about the product anymore.
Yes.
There's 100 pieces to that whole pie, or that if you were to look at it as a wheel, and you have to have all those systems in place. That's why, I say business isn't for everyone, right? These people who I see out there, and listen, some of them make it work. Someone who just had a crazy passion for, I don't know, like you said, they're great at making clothing, or they're a wicked artist. They have that crazy talent. Yeah. But then when I see them go into business, but they don't know anything about business, that's where, things can crash, and then they feel like they're a failure, but they just needed education and all those other components. You need it all in order to make something, fly off the ground. Yeah. And the best advice I've been given recently, as I've started to build other businesses as well, people just keep saying to me, Melanie, it's not a sprint. This is a marathon. And it just from myself too, because I'm a super high achiever, right? I'm a very type A personality. I love things done. I want everything done yesterday. Yeah. And I love fast results. And it was really weighing on me. It's like, whoa, like, okay, is something going to happen yet? It's like, it feels like you're spinning your wheels. You're doing all this work. And but that's how these things go. My success certainly didn't happen overnight. If we consider right from 22, I'm a decade in. So yeah, sure. In 10 years, less than 10 years, I built this, a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio, but that didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one house, two house, three, it takes time to build all this stuff. And every time we start a new venture, same thing. You got to put in that time, that effort, and that energy. And it is hard when people are seeing all the Instagram stories and social media things where it's like overnight, buy this program and you're going to be a millionaire next week. It's really, it's shaping people's opinions to think that this is possible overnight. It absolutely is. That shouldn't discourage people. Where we're coming from, self-made, and we don't have trust funds, and we didn't have a whole chunk of money that was just given to us to start something. This is the road, and that's okay. Yeah. You appreciate it so much more. I value what I have. I value my money. I don't spend it on, for the most part, I hate spending it on any liabilities. I love just putting my money, and it's rewarding to me, as silly as that sounds. It's not as sexy as a lot of people might like it to be, but I'm always, focused on the long-term gain. And thank God I started young, and I'm able to experience some of these benefits now while I'm still young. But hey, I got a long way to go, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah. And what I like about you focusing on the long-term gains is like some of the people we've had on. One guy had, I think, a $300 million company. Now he's in business for over 25 years. A lot of hard work. The first 10 years, he probably didn't see his kids. But he said, people only see now the end result of 25 years worth of work and building this empire. And they're like, some of them are jealous. And the thing is, they're like, oh, look at him. He's rich. Oh, I'm so jealous. And oh, he must think he's something special. I'm like, dude, how are you willing to put in the sacrifice, the risk, the not being with your family, putting every, this is like, he said, like, this is like giving birth to a baby. I mean, and so when I see people getting jealous, I used to be like this in my early 20s. I worked for a business where it was run by a couple, and I used to make fun of them, like, oh, they probably give their babies a gold pacifier. But, we have that in our culture too, where rich equals pompous jerks. And really, a lot of times we don't know the backstory behind that so-called rich person. I mean, they might have been self-made. They might have worked their butts off since the last 25 years, since they were 12 or something. And we're looking at them seeing the end result and being jealous.
It's such a wrong mentality to have for people to look at somebody who's put in all that time, energy, that sacrifice for years, and everybody thinks that other people were an overnight success, or that they had some major advantage that made them that way, right? We should really be, as a society, we should be uplifting these people. We should be saying, absolutely, way to go, and how can I learn from that? What can I take from his experiences? They should be more focused on that if they're trying to get there too, as opposed to just, sitting on the couch and, you want to just pretend that everybody else had some advantage that you didn't have in order to make yourself feel better about your situation.
Yeah.
It's too bad. It's a waste of time because we should be pumping each other up, not the other way around.
Yeah. And I see a great proponent of that happening with women, sadly, of putting down other women. And that is just really, really saddens me. And I'd really like to see that shift where people realize, hey, I like what they have. What can I do differently so I can reach that goal?
Exactly. And pumping each other up in society, right? Standing behind each other. It's harder for women. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there have been a ton of obstacles I had to overcome just being a woman in business, even in real estate. I mean, I wrote about some of the stories in my book, but I've been put down a lot by men. And, people didn't take me seriously. I'd walk into commercial properties, either with my uncle, who was one of my mentors, or my real estate agents. And the sellers wouldn't even look at me. They didn't think the properties were for me.
Yeah.
Not giving me the time of day, or people in my bar business, particularly men, like, oh, this must be your dad's place, or, oh, this must be your husband's place. And I'm laughing. I'm not even married. And, so you're put down a lot in a lot of other ways. And women, they love jumping on that train too. A lot of people, jealousy shouldn't be we should be, as I said, the best thing we do for ourselves, especially as women, because it is harder for us out there. It still is. We might think we've reached equality, but we still got a ways to go. We need to be standing behind each other and really jumping on the train themselves. Hey, I love when I see successful women. I love when I see, and they're looking good, they're feeling good, they're confident, they're got great businesses. I mean, what an inspiration.
Absolutely.
It shows us it's possible. I love it.
Yeah, me too. And there was a gal when I first started my business who was doing the same in the same industry, finance. And I saw her kicking butt. She had built several $1 million company. And I was on Twitter. We were talking back and forth over several months. And I said to her one time on direct message, I said, I'd like to pick your brain one time. Do you have any free time? And she's like, yeah, my consulting fee is XYZ. And I was at first put back, was like, wow, she's a woman. I'm a woman. You think she just helped me? And it took me a few moments to realize, wait a second, that took her 20 years to build this business, raise 2 kids on her own as a single parent. She's a woman. She's kicking butt. Why should she give me her time for free? But it made me back up and be like, wait a second, she shouldn't give me anything for free. I'm asking her for a value, something of value, her time and effort and her knowledge that she took years to build and sweat and tears. So I gladly paid her for her time. But I mean, it took me a moment to, get real and realize, oh no, wait a second, she's worth, in fact, more than she asked me for.
Right. And that's a great mentality. And it's awesome that you stopped and you thought about that for a minute. You went, introspective on yourself to be like, okay, why am I feeling this way about this girl asking me for money for her opinion, and realize the value of that, and realize that that's a positive thing for her. And
yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something else, Melanie, which I thought was interesting. And I've heard it before. But why is it important? Your net worth is the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with. Now, I've heard people say that and you're like, oh yeah, how true is it? But I've found in my life, as I've grown and now I've started to build Savvy and my other business, there's certain people around me who I might have grown up with, very close friends, high school, even family, well-meaning, but they're like your parents, they don't get where your road is, where you're going on your journey, and they could be not all that helpful in moving on your path. What has been your experience?
Well, I've had the same thing. You don't really necessarily choose who you grow up with, who you go to school with when you're really young, and that's fine. You have great friendships. Some of them will last a lifetime. Some of them only lasted, while you were in school. But as you start getting on your entrepreneurial journey, on your personal development path, I started to realize, okay, some things were holding me back. Mm-hmm. I did come from a small town in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. It's a really small town, great people though, but I felt like it was a little bit limiting and a little bit constricting. And sometimes in small, I don't want to blame Niagara, but sometimes you're surrounded by people who have a very limited mindset. And when you grow past that, you realize that sometimes things are holding you back. So in order to hang out with certain people, you'd have to bring yourself down to another level, right? Mm-hmm. So I found myself, sort of keeping quiet about my dreams or toning them down so I wouldn't make other people feel uncomfortable So I realized over time, like, this is actually constricting me. Our goal, especially in personal development, we should be expanding. I love when I hear people talking and they say something I've never even thought of, right? Or it takes me out of this entirely another level where I'm like, whoa, like, I learned something in all these conversations when I have with people who are more successful than me or who have seen more of the world than me or who are doing bigger things than me. And every time you leave one of those conversations, you're expanded and your mind just grew, and then my ideas just grew, and then my dreams get bigger, and the things I achieve now start to get bigger as well. Yes. So, if my goals are I want to have $100 million a year company, well, hey, even if I only hit $50 million a year, I'm going to be, that's still better than pretending that, 100,000 is great, when you're around certain people. So it truly affects. Now, it might be in ways that aren't tangible, right? We can't see them. We can't touch them. That's why people think like, is that really true? Yeah. But it is, because when your mind starts to envision these things as big or as little as they are, that's what becomes possible in our lives. So I just found there really came a point, and I said, nothing of this is feeding me anymore, in these small circles. And I'm not saying that's negative. Some people just love the way their lives are. They're not looking for moon, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But I need it personally. I'm hungry for that. That is my fuel. That's what feeds my mind. So that's when I started just really going to a ton of seminars and conferences, and my mentors would hook me up with people too. And I just started seeking people in entrepreneurial circles and co-working spaces, just anywhere I could meet people who had bigger dreams and who were after bigger things. And I found so much in common with them, and it pushed me harder, gave me ideas, gave me even people to collaborate with, potentially work with. So I think it's hugely valuable in anybody's life in terms of our growth, because again, progress equals happiness, as Tony Robbins would say. I love that quote from him. Totally. And it's true.
Yeah. And what's great about what you're saying there is you might right now be in a position where, hey, I'm working a 9 to 5 and my dream is to one day break out and have a business. And so maybe you're hanging out with people who are maybe limited minded, but like one gal who came on my show said, you don't have to always share things with people around you who might not understand or try to pop your dream. But that doesn't mean you can't seek other people who want to expand with you and build relationships, even if you're in a position right now where you are in a 9 to 5 or, maybe in a family element where you can't leave home yet. You're still not, of age. It doesn't mean you can't expand. And that's what happened for me, actually, Melanie. I started hanging out with this self-help motivational group that started to get me to think about life differently. And you can start there, wherever you're at. And that's one of the things I got too, is that where you see someone else is not where you are at, but it doesn't matter. You can start wherever you're at.
Absolutely. I found too, I was working, as you know, in the bar industry for a very, very long time. And that was difficult too, because, people weren't talking about massive goals. There was a very different atmosphere. So I was lacking it. I was lacking mental, mind feed. So what I did during that time, and that's what pushed me to get out so bad, but I turned to books. So even when I got home at 4 a.m, whatever it was, I would read, and I couldn't put books down. Sometimes I didn't even sleep, or I would just study something that I was interested in. And that helped me through those times when I was in a circumstance where I didn't have people around me, my coworkers, customers, things like that were giving me anything or inspiration in my day or talking about, I don't want to say anything worth of value, but you understand my point.
Yeah, getcha.
Truly, I turned to books, and that inspired me. Audios, I'd listen to it in the car, all kinds of people. And that really kind of took me to that time. You have it's kind of like a conversation with the author at that point when you don't have a physical person to sort of talk to and to help inspire you and talk about goals and dreams. So books are huge as for mind feed.
Absolutely. Well, this has been such a fascinating talk. I think we can go on for hours about this, and we totally could, but I want everyone to go out there and get the Wealthy Barmaid from minimum wage to millionaire today, and let people know where they can find out more about you as well.
Absolutely. You can reach me on melaniebajrovic.com, also thewealthybarmaid.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms. I got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, all under The Wealthy Barmaid is my handle.
Fabulous. Well, I just have to thank you again. This has been a great episode. Hopefully keeping people forward in 2018. You can reach your dreams, your goals. You were meant to be your greatest possible self. And I have to thank you again, Melanie, for coming to share your great gifts and wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Oh, anytime. Thank you so much again for having me, Christina.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.